Okay, so I'm Stéfan. I'm at Berkeley, and I'm with the Scientific Python project. We are trying to better integrate the community of developers and support them. And my goal for today is just to learn as much as I can about the need for the domain pages that we'll be talking about soon. Juanita?
Hi everyone, I am Juanita. I think I've seen a lot of you already. I am a community manager at the Scientific Python project, and I have been working with Stéfan and Jared on, I guess, building the community around the Scientific Python and sort of trying to integrate the projects. And I'm happy to help however I can. I'll be posting the recording on our YouTube channel, just in case you want to come back to it. And I'm going to try to be taking notes during the meeting, so we have like 2 sources to go back to.
Paige?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Martin. I'm currently a postdoc with Ryan, who's also here at Columbia University. Currently working at the intersection of kind of climate and data science, but also very much involved in the Pangeo community, a community for kind of big data geoscience. And yeah, I'd like to kind of get more and more involved with these communities. I think they're really important for pushing forward the science. So thanks for the invitation. Really great to be here.
Thanks for coming. Isaac?
Hey, I'm Isaac. I'm a software engineer at Helmholtz in Munich. I'm currently working on, I work on kind of the intersection of cell biology and machine learning and represent the scverse community, which has just been forming around that.
Henry?
Hi, guess we're doing introductions.
Yes.
I just got audio like 30 seconds ago. Yeah, I'm Henry Schreiner. I'm a RC and computational physicist at Princeton University. I'm working with Scikit-HEP, Scikit-build, and the Python Packaging Authority.
Thank you. Let's see, Jim?
Jim, your mic's off.
Okay, we'll come back to Jim in a second. I see, I just see PLLIM.
Oh, yes. PLLIM is my GitHub name, which is probably the best to use. My given name is Pey Lian. I'm a software engineer at Space Telescope Science Institute. I'm here on behalf of the Astropy project. Adrian is also supposed to join, but he had a conflict, so he couldn't join. So it's just me from Astropy today.
Great, thanks for joining. Pamphile?
Yeah, hi everyone. Pamphile Roy. I'm a software engineer at QuantSight. And here I'm working on consulting work and also supporting a few open source packages. And I'm a maintainer of SciPy as such. So, and I'm part of this Scientific Python community group.
Great, thanks. Ryan?
Hey, I'm Ryan Abernathey. I am a oceanographer at Columbia University. I helped get the Pangeo community off the ground. And I am a maintainer of Xarray and ZAR. I am really excited to be here, really excited about this effort. It's this awkward week before school really starts full time. So I am currently also hanging out with my 6-year-old son and trying to keep him entertained while listening to the call. So I'm mostly going to be in quiet listening mode. But fortunately, Paige from our project is also here, and she can probably speak up a lot more than me. So thanks for the invitation.
Excellent. Thanks for joining, Ryan. Martin, did I tag you already?
No. Hello, I'm Martin Fleischmann. I would say geographer these days. I'm part of Geography Data Science Lab at the University of Liverpool and Urban Regional Lab at Charles University in Prague. I also have some part of my time spending in industry, but I'm here probably because I'm one of the maintainers of GeoPandas and Python. So the geospatial community leaning more towards vector data, unlike the Pangeo, which I believe is more about raster stuff.
Nice to meet you. All right. Juanita just shared in the chat where we'll be taking notes if you want to type along or read along. Maybe I'll give a summary of what I think we're here for today. And then, did I get everyone, by the way? Did everyone introduce themselves? Good. Oh, Jim. Yes, Jim didn't have a microphone. Let's hear from Jim again.
Hi, Jim Pivarski, Princeton scientist working with Henry, awkward array, and also Scikit-HEP. That's the high energy physics community. Move the dot. I was about to say that. Okay.
Nice to meet you, Jim. I've been excited to see the work that the Scikit-HEP community is doing. So I wasn't at SciPy, like I said, but my understanding is that a lot of this comes from we used to have a page on the SciPy website that explained what different packages would be used in different domains, but it used to be a single long list of packages, and something like NumPy would appear once in the page, would be under general computing, and then we'd highlight the different domain-specific packages. But that is not the best way to guide a newcomer in any specific domain into the packages they need. So we're looking for a better way to organize that content, for making that content visible. And then there's also a lot of activity around, like, more than just a list, but helping newcomers get started with cookie cutters and that sort of thing. And a lot of projects have built this overlapping often, building this separately for their project. And we're looking for better ways of perhaps centralizing some of this work, perhaps joining hands and building some of it together, putting it in places where it can easily be found and made sense. And from the scientific Python perspective, I'm interested in how we can help with that, what we can host, what we can help co-host and help develop. So I wonder, Paige, from what I understand, there was an initial idea from you and Ryan around organizing this. Maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I can't really claim credit. This was Ryan's post. So Ryan, if you want to chime in, feel free. But yeah, I think the idea was, having a place that can really steer, I guess specifically new users, but any users of scientific Python, as I think that's something that we actually, a couple of us this weekend, were trying to do a bit of a refactor on the Pangeo website, and that was kind of our main thing. If you come to this website, what are you looking for? I think a lot of people might say, oh, I'm coming from X domain and going here. And I think we want to have, like, here are many of the tools that are used in your domain. So I think that was kind of my understanding of what Ryan kind of started, and then it started a whole discussion, which I think is partly why we're all here.
A specific term that came up was sort of, instead of one-to-many, having a many-to-many relationship, just thinking in terms of NumPy, for example, is maybe the most generic example. Maybe we'll take a Scikit-image, for example. You do image processing in lots of different domains, so you can't really get away with a linear list, because a Scikit-image might appear many times in that list because it's used in biology and astronomy and what have you. So we're looking for. So do you have a sense of what the structure would be that would best accommodate that?
I mean, many of you may have thought of this more than me, but I guess my first thought was instead of having like these linear lists, or maybe in addition to, we would have, if we can kind of tag, like have the tag idea. This is, just throwing out, one idea here. But if, we say Scikit image is used in, astronomy for this, it's used in this other domain, in high energy physics for this. That way, if someone goes through, you can be like, just, click on your domain, astronomy, and it will pull up everything that has been tagged for that domain. That was my first thought. Happy to hear others.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Idea can be nice with that. Like it's easy to have nodes, and like with the tags as well. It's quite nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we have
I'll try and chime in with just one idea here. Sorry to just grab the mic. I think a concept that's been really useful is the word stacks. And I think like the concept of a stack is unfamiliar to most users who are coming from an environment like, where they're say, doing MATLAB, where it's just like all one sort of monolithic environment. And in Pangeo, we've tried really hard to communicate the idea that like there are layers, right? There's like a foundational layer, and then there's like, X-ray is an important layer in our world, and then there's many things built on top of that. And so finding a way to communicate that that's how our whole ecosystem is structured, I think would be a really useful goal in terms of helping people, particularly new users, understand how it all fits together.
Pei, you've got your hand up?
Yes. So forgive me if I'm a bit behind on this. I wasn't really aware of this effort until SciPy meeting. So forgive me if some of this has been discussed. So you're talking about a listing of packages. So are you talking about the libraries that people use, or are we also talking about infrastructure stuff? And the other thing is, I don't know how close of what you're doing is connected to what Astropy has attempted. We have this concept of Astropy affiliated packages. So the challenge with keeping the list is actually to vet them first, and make sure that there's no like 10 different packages that's trying to do the same thing. And then we still have not figured out how to go back and review all the 40 plus packages that we have approved before. Mm-hmm. So it's been a challenge. So I don't know if that is what you're trying to do, or you're talking about something else.
Yeah, I think there are at least two different things we're discussing. Just on your question about infrastructure, I think we have the landing pages we're talking about that could guide a newcomer as to what they should be using and where to go. But I definitely think we want to think more broadly. Like I mentioned earlier on, we have cookie cutters, and we have lots of projects of overlapping discords for discussing this and for welcoming newcomers in. And I think that organization is part of this effort. And if someone else wants to talk about the review aspect.
For the review aspect, what I personally had in mind was to try to give the responsibility of some stack to people who actually know the stack. So user and people who are already responsible of these kind of things in your respective communities. So people like Paige, for instance, in your community, you know what's used, and you're following this, and me or Stéfan, we are not, for instance, and it makes totally sense that you are responsible for this part of the stack. And so personally, that's how I envision this, is to try to find persons who are actually knowledgeable in different area, in different stacks. And these persons will be responsible of maintaining these stacks. And when they don't want to do this anymore, their responsibility is to find somebody else who can do that for them, and then maybe we have something which is sustainable in the long term.
How do you ensure that you have people who can pick those packages out?
You mean, like, for instance, if Paige will leave and we need to find somebody else, or?
Yeah, I guess, like, when does a community get to have an entry here?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe we all vote and say, like, astronomy is a big topic and we have some criteria to say astronomy should be a topic. It can be in terms of number of users of a community, or I don't know.
I suspect most of this is fairly uncontroversial. So it'd be fine to start with an opinionated list, and then if people are really concerned that some package should appear there, just put the package on there. But I think we're quite far from that.
I guess, like, I do worry about with, like, I feel like lists start getting less useful the longer they are, and at that point maybe you just go and you search.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're searching anyways, would you find these packages?
I think because the goal is a bit to have something really created. And yeah, I don't know. Like, if I, like, for instance, if I want to search for something in oceanography, I don't know. So if I'm not in the field, I would not know any vocabulary associated to this field. And maybe I have, like, because I'm a consultant, maybe I have a project with somebody in this field, and I would not know what's important and not in this field, or seen as important. And this kind of list can help me to do that, because Google will have like 100 links and I would not know anything about them. I would need to click on each of them, go to GitHub and do my own assessments. And here's like a curated list. We know that this package, they are following some criteria, like they're open source, they have a community, blah, 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 a full list of things. And yeah, that's my thinking.
What if the thing that bumps them off the list is inactivity? That could be something that is defined in an automated way so that someone doesn't have to review that. So that, you know, the human review comes in putting it on the list. It's like, oh, I know about this thing. This is an important thing. And then 5 years later, it's not an important thing and I'm not around anymore to take it off. But it bumps itself off because nobody has released a version in 4 of those years or something.
Makes sense. So just for me to better understand, are these pages mainly aimed at newcomers, or are they also for more seasoned users of the community? And is the goal ultimately to have, I presume we'd want a central resource where, or do you think it makes sense the way it currently is, where a lot of these are hosted by different projects?
I think it makes sense to centralize some things. Like, I think some discussions can be centralized. I think like something that I have definitely struggled with in the past is like, who are the people who are maintaining other software stacks? Who can I reach out to? And I feel like I would really value there being a place to talk to these people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. And maybe even more than the package themselves. Like,
yes,
there's a contact point for this stack that I can like ping, or
yeah. So maybe we can see this as a joint resource of the community, and then we can have the maintainers that talk to one another, both about how the pages are structured, how to best structure them, and I think that's also what today's meeting is more sort of on the big picture planning meeting. but I'm hoping that future meetings here will be, more work focused, trying to actually hash out the details of how we're going to do this. We're doing the actual work.
So I guess I just wanted to maybe clarify what we were talking about. Maybe I got a little lost in the conversation. So I'm envisioning like at least a page, or maybe like some sort of web page through Scientific Python, where if we do like the tag idea, I don't know if that's set, but just let's say we do that, then someone coming there, whether they're new or not, could search, I'm in oceanography and I want to do, maybe even oceanography and visualization, like what are the ones that, both of those. And I think that would be useful for newcomers and for, more seasoned or intermediate programmers who might just be like, oh, I wonder what, am I using the right packages or the most up to date? I really like the idea of having some automation if those GitHub repos haven't been, if a new release hasn't been made in X amount of time, maybe they either get removed or they get marked as stale or something. I think that would be good. I think more automation for us is better. About the idea of who then creates those tags and who, if you add something, who would add something new? Do we envision this being open, or anyone could add any packages, but that we just want to have at least one person from each community that, however, every week or every month will just like go look through everything in their, domain. So like for Pangeo, if I were the Pangeo point person, maybe it's my job to make sure things are up to date. But I would also say we should welcome anyone who wants to add, maybe not anyone, but maybe have it has to be reviewed or something. But yeah, so I guess clarifying, I think it's probably good to have a point person for each community, but I don't think that's necessary to have them be the only person who's going to be curating those packages.
Yeah, that makes sense. All the website, all the pages on scientificpython.org are open. Of course, I live in a GitHub repo, so people can come by, make pull requests, and then it will be, the person that will review it will probably be this responsible person from the project, or from the domain, I suppose. So that makes sense to me.
But then I guess, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just to jump on your point, maybe actually it would be nice to have an extra tag, which is something like vetted by the Scientific Python community or not, so that anybody, as you said, can propose something and the review process is a bit light there, and anybody can add a package. And because we have this filter system, we can just filter by, automatically we filter by vetted package maybe, and then you only see that, and so anybody can put their package there.
Okay, we have hands from Ryan and then Pey.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just offer a semi-provocative counterpoint to the idea that we're trying to create a website where anyone can just list their Python package. I think what makes our ecosystem amazing is the sort of decentralization of it all, and the fact that there's so much activity, so many creative people doing things, putting things out there. But at a certain level, that also becomes a problem for our community, because it's hard for people to figure out, okay, well, what's the best choice of tools for a particular job? And I think also when you compare that with other open source, scientific ecosystems like R, I think it's clear that there, is to some degree just better coordination ecosystem wide, at least in terms of discovering what tools to use. So I think that we should actually have some quite high standards about what is going to go here, to distinguish it, because there's already websites out there, awesome Python packages for climate science. There's many informal things that people can find. But what's unique about this group is that to some degree, we have the authority, the voice to speak on behalf of the scientific Python community as a whole. And so that's a very sort of precious and important and delicate thing to do, but I think we should embrace it and try to set some kind of relatively high bar for something to get in here. And in terms of vetting or reviewing or validating package quality, I said this in the chat and I'll just repeat it. There's an effort in that area that's already ongoing, which is the Pi OpenSci effort led by Leah Wasser. And her goal there and the goal of that group is really to have a formal review process to ensure packages are meeting, best practices and are, to some degree not duplicating functionality, modeled directly on the our OpenSci process. And so, yeah, I guess I'll just throw that idea out there that we should not just have a very, very open, highly decentralized list, but rather a much more curated, much higher standard for what we are putting out there.
Okay, there are hands up. Pei, do you want to wait, or do you want to respond to this point? Or anyone who wants to respond to Ryan can talk now, and then we'll give Pei a chance after that. Isaac, was your point response to Ryan's?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how to phrase it, right? I think that's a really good point. And I think there's also I think it would be good to consider what are the other things that we gain out of this. I think the kind of coordinated review, the kind of making sure that we don't have overlapping functionality or that things are well coordinated is a value. But I think what are the things that coming together creates as value? Would be something I'd be interested to hear from people here.
I also just want to mention that talking about Pi OpenSci and R OpenSci, the scientific Python ecosystem of libraries, it looks a little bit different than in R. I think our long tail of small packages is shorter, and packages tend to aggregate into larger packages. So there may be quite a clear cutoff in what is an obvious package to include in the domain, and then smaller packages, some of them could be useful. We're not saying they're not. They could be reviewed by Pi OpenSci or other efforts appear in other lists, but it would be fine for us to make a conservative inclusion into what is commonly used. Anyway, I want to give Pei a chance to talk as well.
Thank you. So in some aspects, I agree with Ryan's points. For newcomer, at least in my experience in a really small astronomy subgroup, people tend to discover packages by tutorials. People don't just hunt down lists. They follow some existing tutorial and they say, okay, this package works for me. Okay, that package doesn't really do what I want it to do. And also astronomy, people like to just write their own stuff, no matter what. So we end up with a bunch of similar, but not quite the same, that kind of try to solve the same problem, which is still something we try to navigate as a community. The other thing about letting anyone list their package is also open us up to some security concern. There are articles out there about how people purposely sabotage their own open source packages to make a point, or maybe someone's not careful and let some malicious code get injected here and there. I don't know. But once you release a website, either directly or indirectly, you're slapping your brand on it. And if something goes wrong, where are the lawyers? What are the license agreement? That's something also we need to think about. Also, for me as a maintainer, having a list like this is more useful. If I'm doing a branch release, what is the backport bot that I should be using? Is it scalable? Can I also apply it to all these 10 other projects? Instead of as a beginner looking for a list of packages. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think regarding the security concern, at least if we select large enough packages, those packages are watched very closely and have a lot of quality control in place. But of course, we're just a community recommending things to other people. So ultimately, it's like what I imagine is you want to replicate the feeling of going to a SciPy conference, talking to a bunch of other people who work in the same space and tell you like, oh yeah, you should definitely be using this package. Works great for that purpose. But yeah, friends can sometimes make mistakes in recommending things. Paige?
I think it is good to think about some of these points. Going back to what Ryan mentioned earlier and having, kind of specifying what are the kind of core packages of a certain discipline. For instance, like climate modeling is really heavily based on X-ray. That's kind of a core package that a lot of things are built on top of. And if we can make that clear that like here are some core packages, I think that would be useful on two fronts. Like first of all, those are probably going to be more previously vetted by others, and so probably less of a security risk, but also to the point of I agree with what you were saying, Pei, about how a lot of people might not want a list of packages. They learn through tutorials, which I think that's great, and they should, we should continue to have tutorials for things. But I think if there is a list that's kind of like, here are like the 2 or 3 or however many core packages that are used by almost all people in whatever field, I think if I knew there was a list like that, I think that would be more useful than just, here are the 100 packages. Some of them have been used by 2 people and some are used by everyone. And you can see that if you go to GitHub, but some might not know, some people might not know that or might not look for that. So yeah, I think maybe that's something we should include.
Ryan, your hand's still up, but was that from the previous time? Yeah. Okay, any other comments? Levi.
Yeah.
You should say quickly, we haven't heard from you before.
Yes, I joined late. So hi, my name's Levi Wolf. I'm a maintainer of GeoPandas, as well as working on a couple other kind of spatial statistical packages across the Geo ecosystem. I really like that point from Paige that there is this kind of, we need the list of packages, obviously, to let people know what is kind of commonly used in certain areas. But I kind of find that a lot of the fragmentation in the community-driven ecosystem comes from the fact that a lot of the workshops that we build are kind of extended documentation for a single package, or kind of like a very small collection of packages that we're incentivized to build like a larger kind of integrated discussion about. And I actually don't normally see many kind of workshops or teaching kind of materials created that show you how to bridge across a lot of different ones. I know that Martin and I have worked with Jared Millman and NetworkX to try and show like how you can move from network science into geography and back, which is something that happens a lot for our users. But I think that those integrations are really important, and the difference between all of us kind of working on our individual things versus in another ecosystem having kind of a central, industrial partner or one kind of person writing all the tools, as is the case for Julia Geo. You get this like massive consolidation of, well, I've written all these packages, I know how they all link together, so this is how you use them together. Whereas I think for us, our typical kind of pedagogical culture is much more about creating tools for single packages, and I think that's what we need to break out of.
That's a very interesting point, and I'm curious. Yeah, go Ryan.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say I really like what was just said, and it's almost explicitly what our goal is with Pangeo. There is no package called Pangeo, right? When we started the effort, we said, okay, all of the functionality our community needs, or much of it, kind of exists out there. What we really need is an integration project to make sure all of these packages are operating together well, and documentation and training that explains how to use them as an ecosystem. So I think that's absolutely the right vision. And I'm going to link to some training material that I think is a good sort of example and counterexample of what I'm sorry, I missed the name of the person who was just speaking, but of how that can be done. It's called Project Pythia. So just strong agree.
And just out of the perspective of a user trying to find this knowledge, where do you expect this sort of thing to live? Is this something that should be more common in project documentation, or should this be part of a more centralized resource?
I know that for the GeoPandas project, Martin, Joris, and I have put together these kinds of cross-package workshops that usually lives with our organization. I don't know, like the power of the stack is the fact that it all sits on top of one another, right? So you have to leverage that. And so like when we talk about the GeoPandas stack, we've taught from, the very basic, this is how you represent a geometry, to this is how you find which geometry is nearest another geometry. So we see that as kind of part of the general GeoPandas community teaching materials, which there's something kind of above the package, but maybe that's a good spot for something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I could just say this is also something I think is very similar to what we've been doing in Scikit-HEP, where we have a list of our own packages plus affiliated packages, for which for us means there's at least one, unofficially anyway, really means there's at least one maintainer who's part of Scikit-HEP who's also a maintainer on one of those packages. But the idea sort of being that those fill in gaps that we don't need to develop because someone else has developed that. And then we're sort of dealing with the fact that building tutorials that work across these packages, showing how all of these work together, is one of the sort of the next things that people really want. Sort of having a highly curated list plus sort of tutorials that use several of these packages at once. Because say a NumPy tutorial will show you how to use NumPy, but it doesn't necessarily show you how that integrates with various other tools. Those both are very useful things.
I'm wondering, what is the, I agree that these are very useful. And I think that the right place for them to live is somewhere that's owned by the specific stack. But I'm wondering what this community can do to, I guess, improve these or make these easier. I think one thing is if we can share tooling for organizing these things. I mean, updating your notebooks is a pain. Just rerunning them on new versions. I think there could be some shared tooling there. I think also just advice on how do you organize these things? Or if we're crossing domains in some packages, if we could maybe get some help from another package developer on are we using your package appropriately? I think this will come up in the near future for us with Shapely. I was are we using Shapely and are we using GeoPandas correctly here, or should we actually be doing something totally different? And are we recommending the right way to use them?
Jim?
Yeah, another place where we could share tooling is some of the things that like what Paige was talking about, some aspects of this list, we'd want to have them automated, such as when experts are checking out a package, they'll usually go to the GitHub and see that it's active and stuff like that. Those are all things that could be automated, and if all of our different domains can do those, can share tools for doing things like that, to make sure that our recommendations are up to date and they don't become like the Python wiki. That's the kind of thing that we could benefit from sharing. Otherwise, we're all writing it ourselves.
Can you be more specific on the kinds of things you have in mind, or just give an example maybe? Are we talking about adding metadata to the entries on the pages to say okay, this page was last updated this date, or it's got so many stars? Or are you thinking more infrastructure?
No, just what you said. something that could run a GitHub API, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But these are things that experts know to go and look, but not everybody, not everybody works like that.
I should mention that, so we're talking now about the external perspective, but just for the developers of these libraries, we're working on developer dashboards for the different projects, so that will be an effort to go onto GitHub, grab different metrics on how active the project is, how quickly they respond to PRs, how many PRs have been left behind, anything you can think of. Anything that would be helpful in guiding development further. So yeah, that's something we can also discuss. I wonder if we can also, since we're talking a little bit about infrastructure, if we can broaden the conversation to talk about things that have been developed by the different projects, like cookie cutters. I know working on that are useful for people from multiple domains, and ways in which we can better coordinate their development to support their development. I know, for example, we've been using in NumPy and SciPy, we've been having custom versions of a doc tester that we recently factored out, just because it's a tool that once it's factored out will likely become used by a lot of other packages in the ecosystem. Some of these tools are already very widely used. Any thoughts on that?
Definitely useful. I have many thoughts. Astropy developed a few things that we use in our infrastructure. Is kind of homegrown, and we are running out of resources to keep maintaining them. So it's definitely useful from a maintainer's perspective to have shared infrastructure tools that don't have single point of failures. So as I mentioned earlier, things that can help backports or doc tests, different flavors of doc tests. So floating point, ellipses. Ellipses are already possible. So really, doc test that's really geared towards scientific computing, not the general stuff. Things like that. We also have remote data flags, a huge memory flags for the test that can only run when you have enough memory. So things like that. So personally, I'll be really interested to collaborate with you all on those things.
I also want to mention that if people are looking for a home for tools that are very broadly applicable, we're happy to put those inside the scientific Python org and then give you the key so you can manage the people who work on it, run it all by yourself. We're not running those projects. We just happen to have this name there. But yeah, often if you have something that's centrally visible, it helps to get more participation from the wider community. And that's helpful.
So I have, so for Scikit-HEP, we have a series of three tools: Scikit-HEP Cookie, Scikit-HEP Repo Review, and Scikit-HEP, the Scikit-HEP developer pages. And all three of these things work together. The developer pages describe exactly how you should structure a package, how you should, best practices, things like that. The cookie has 11 different backends, built backends and various other things. And then the repo review is something that can actually even run in WebAssembly and check and see how well your package is following the developer guidelines. And this is all designed to be extremely general. It's not specific to Scikit-HEP at all. In fact, it's at least general to scientific packages, possibly to all packages. So and I think a lot of people have trouble finding the Scikit-HEP developer pages just because they're under Scikit-HEP. So it sounds like it's a Scikit-HEP thing. So I've been thinking about a new home for that. Something in scientific Python would make sense. but I don't know if you want it just to be called Scientific Python Cookie. I mean, I think everybody would kind of have to agree that that was useful to do that.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I'm curious about the cookie cutters. There are sort of two axes. So we're talking now about the domain. So we have people coming in from astronomy, biology, whatever. And do the cookie cutters look different for those domains? And then also levels of expertise. So if you start off with a project, you probably only want the basics and then expand functionality as you go along. So I'm not very familiar with the cookie cutters, but is there a way to address that?
So I've been thinking a little bit about the domain, but I have to think about that a bit more. Currently, I have just a single switch and it checks to see what organization you're targeting. And if you target Scikit-HEP organization, it'll add a couple badges. That's all it does. That's the only specific thing to Scikit-HEP. And it does default, that is the default suggestion for an organization. For the levels of expertise, that's definitely a big thing. So the way that the Scikit-HEP cookie cutter was intended to be used is it says, if you haven't ever built a package before, please don't use the cookie cutter. Instead, go to the Scikit-HEP developer pages and build it up yourself. Once you've done that, now you can use the cookie cutter to make new packages because the developer pages describe every single thing in detail. Every choice there is synchronized with the developer pages. So it has like quite a few different checks and things. It doesn't have its own custom tooling. So it uses standard tools other places. Like fix the standard tool if there's a problem with that. But it is intended sort of to be for the more advanced user, and beginning user really should. I mean, you need the experience of building your own package once. It is very hard to jump into a cookie cutter, do that to produce a package, and then you don't know what all these different things are and why they're there. You understand why they're there if you built them up one at a time yourself, following a guide. So that's why those two things go together. The same thing is done with hypermodern Python, except as a series of blog posts, which is not kept updated, as well as an actual page that's intended to be a resource.
Yeah, the developer pages also sound interesting to me. We originally envisioned having a resource like that on Scientific Python. There are a lot of different sets of documentation out there that guide developers on how to develop new packages. And could be that we could merge several of these resources into good guides for maintainers. Yeah, it'd be useful. Ryan, did you just put your hand up?
Yeah, I had just another quick comment along these lines. I think one thing that's pretty unique about our community, like as in the scientific community compared to general Python, is like our need to often like sort of link to sort of maybe legacy code that's written in Fortran or C++ or something like that. I'm thinking especially, like F2Py, it's pretty obscure sometimes trying to figure out how to use it. So a place to centralize knowledge about that and coordinate, some best practices would be really useful. There's also a lot of people building sort of numerical extensions now in Rust, or I guess I'm just thinking of like that sort of high performance scientific computing aspect of this, which is pretty unique for us.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, by the way, is one thing that is unique about one of the reasons it has 11 backends, besides supporting a variety of PEP 621 backends, is also that Cookie Cutter supports Scikit build binary extensions, PyBind11 binary extensions, and Rust. Someone contributed a Rust backend as well, or suggested a Rust backend. I think I have it. But yes, that is definitely more specific, and I see that in the Python packaging authority that binary builds are something we are very interested in, and the general community is often less interested in. They should be, but they're not as interested in it as they should be, I think.
So I think we don't have a lot of time left, so I would like to maybe ask I guess 2 questions before we like wrap up the meeting. The first one is, what are the next steps? Like, what do we want to do first in order to get this going? And the second one is, how can we help from the Scientific Python project to like start doing all these things, right?
So for me, at least when I see the cookie cutter stuff, I don't know, like maybe the people interested in this, I can hook you up with the people I know who are interested in templating in Astropy project, because there are like at least 2 templates just in our projects that we don't know how to consolidate. So maybe we can just retire them both and use yours. So definitely interested to pursue that idea from Astropy.
So would it make sense to perhaps organize like a short sprint to just start, hacking out the first pages here? We could build some preliminary infrastructure on the Hugo side just to make it easy. Like Jim mentioned, Paige mentioned the metadata that we might want to attach to different projects, so we could maybe work a little bit on that beforehand, and then start working on the content together. Maybe some people want to work on the cookie cutters during that time. Would that be fun, or do you think there's a different kind of follow-up meeting that would be more useful?
Is this project on GitHub, or is this on Discord? Where should I route the interested people from Astropy to talk about specific things more?
I missed the first part of your sentence there. Could you say again?
Are you on GitHub or you on Discord? Like, how do we do this offline?
Yeah, so we've got Discord for real-time community chat, and then we've got discuss.scientificpython.org, which is discourse for longer written discussions.
I think the idea of a hack or of some sort sounds good. It could also serve as a bit of a, if we jump on Zoom, there's like a bit of a, we can still discuss these ideas. I think at the start, it's important to kind of keep momentum going. So I know time is valuable, so there's a trade-off, but to have a few things where we start making progress that, we could change later if we decide to upgrade. But I think taking some steps is important at the beginning as we get started.
Ryan's hand is still up. Ryan, is that from the previous time? Yeah. Any other thoughts on what would make for a good follow-up?
So my thought is that we should probably start gathering the information in one place. Like, I know there's a lot of resources, at least a bunch of packages and pages and stuff. But I mean, if we're going to try to have like a landing page where newcomers can come and see like, what are these packages useful for, or domains for stacks, the first thing we probably need to do is start, I don't know, choosing these categories or domains or stacks or whatever we want to call them in order to start like going from there, right? Like once we have like, I don't know, like a general idea of we want, I don't know, Pangeo domain or community or whatever, then I guess the Pangeo people can help us build from there, right? So maybe a first step I would suggest would be like having the like general categories and maybe trying to organize this in a document or somewhere where we can all collaborate and add in there And then after we have like some information, then we can start building the websites, right?
Okay, well, that sounds good. I think, yeah, that was a great high-level discussion. Thanks. It's interesting also to learn about all the sub-projects that exist under all the other projects. And yeah, then we'll be looking forward to doing some upfront work before we have a follow-up meeting where we'll be doing some actual work and hopefully produce some initial pages to put online. Thanks so much, everyone, for your time. Appreciate you joining, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.